The sound cracked through Red Hollow like a gunshot, sharp enough to make Mason Reed stop mid-step. The afternoon sun poured through the dusty front window of Harper's supply store, lighting everything inside like a stage. And right there in the center of it, Mason saw a man strike a young woman across the face like it meant nothing at all. Her head snapped to the side, but she did not cry. She did not beg. She straightened slowly, lifted her chin, and stood there in silence. The kind of silence that carried more strength than shouting ever could. Mason's hand drifted toward the grip of his revolver without thinking. He had spent years chasing down men who deserved it, years learning when to step in and when to walk away. Most of the time, walking away kept you alive. But something about her stopped him cold. And maybe it was the way she held herself. Maybe it was the quiet fire in her eyes. Or maybe it was the memory it dragged up from a place he tried not to visit anymore. Through the glass, their eyes met. Hers were dark, steady, and full of something buried deep. Pain, yes, but also pride, and something worse than both. Endurance, not for days, not for weeks, for years. In that moment, Mason knew one thing clear as the desert sky. If he walked away now, he would carry it with him forever. He pushed the door open. The small bell above it rang, and the man inside turned. His name was Victor Hale, and he owned more of Red Hollow than anyone dared admit out loud. Money, land, and men who followed his word like it was law. Victor's sneer faded when he saw who had walked in. Mason stood in the doorway, tall and still, a dust on his coat, eyes sharp and unreadable, the kind of man trouble recognized before it arrived. His gaze moved across the room slowly, the broken bottle on the floor, the girl kneeling to pick up glass, the bruise forming on her cheek, the fear hanging thick in the air. "What's going on here?" Mason asked, his voice calm, almost too calm. Victor scoffed, folding his arms. "Teaching my worker a lesson. She gets clumsy." Mason looked at the girl again. She was young, no more than 19. Her hands trembled slightly as she gathered the shards, but her back stayed straight. Around her neck hung a small blue stone pendant, catching the sunlight with every movement. Her lip was cut, her cheek was swelling, but her spirit had not broken. That much was clear. Mason said nothing else. Not yet. He turned and walked out. But the sound of that slap stayed with him. That night, the town buzzed like it always did, pretending nothing was wrong. Inside the Broken Spur saloon, laughter and music filled the air, but Mason sat alone at a corner table, untouched whiskey in front of him. Everyone knew. No one acted. That was how places like Red Hollow survived. A woman approached him after a while, older, worn by life but not defeated by it. Her name was Clara Bennett, the woman who ran the boarding house. She sat across from him with a quiet sigh. "You're thinking about her," she said. Mason didn't answer right away. Clara studied him, then nodded to herself. "I've seen that look before. My husband had it, right before he did something brave enough to get himself buried." Mason's jaw tightened. "Someone should help her." Clara leaned closer, but lowering her voice. "Victor Hale owns half this town, the sheriff included. You step in, you won't just be helping her. You'll be declaring war." "Then why hasn't anyone else done it?" Mason asked. Clara's eyes softened, filled with something close to shame. "Because she's alone. Because she doesn't belong to the kind of people this town protects." Mason leaned back, staring into his glass. Alone. He knew that feeling too well. Years ago, he had a home, a wife, a little girl who used to run to him every evening like he was the whole world. Then one night, he chose work over them, and by the time he came back, there was nothing left but smoke and silence. Since then, he had stopped believing in fixing things. Some losses stayed lost. Some people could not be saved. But that girl's eyes kept coming back to him. Not begging, not broken, waiting. Late that night, Mason lay awake on a thin mattress in Clara's boarding house, staring at the ceiling while the wind whispered outside. He tried to forget it, tried to tell himself it wasn't his fight. But deep down, something had already shifted. At sunrise, he rode out into the hills. He had come to Red Hollow for a reason: a bounty. A cattle thief named Diego Vargas, rumored to be hiding somewhere near Victor Hale's land. It didn't take long to find him, but what Mason found along the way made his blood run colder than the desert night ever could. Hidden trails, stolen cattle, men moving in and out under cover of Hale's land. Victor Hale wasn't just a cruel man. He was part of something bigger, something rotten. Back in town, the girl sat alone in a small room above the store. She pressed a cloth to her bruised face and touched the blue stone at her neck, whispering a quiet prayer under her breath. Not for rescue, for strength, for one more day. Then she moved to the window, and there, in the distance, she saw Mason Reed riding back toward town. Slow, steady, certain. The kind of ride a man took when he had already made up his mind. And whatever choice he had made was about to change both of their lives forever. The sun stood high over Red Hollow when Mason Reed rode back into town. But this time, he did not come quietly. A man was tied across his horse, wrists bound, head hanging low. Diego Vargas. The bounty Mason had come for, proof of his work. But that was not the only thing Mason had brought back with him. He had brought a decision. Inside Harper's store, the air felt tight, or like something waiting to snap. The girl stood behind the counter, placing items on the shelf with slow, careful movements. Every motion looked practiced, like she had learned how to exist without drawing attention. Still, her eyes shifted toward the door the moment it opened. Mason stepped inside. Dust clung to his coat. His presence filled the room without effort. Calm, steady, and dangerous in a way that did not need to be spoken. Victor Hale stood near the back, counting coins. He looked up, irritation crossing his face before it settled into something sharper. "You again," Victor said. Mason gave a small nod, then rested his hand lightly on the counter. "Heard you've got a worker tied to some kind of debt." The girl froze. The room seemed to go still with her. Victor let out a short laugh. "Oh, what's that to you?" Mason's eyes didn't leave him. "I'm here to settle it. Name your price." The girl's breath caught. Victor straightened, puffing his chest, trying to regain control of the moment. "She ain't something you can just buy." Mason took one slow step forward. "Everything's got a price," he said quietly. "Question is, do you want money or trouble?" Outside, people began gathering near the windows. Red Hollow might ignore suffering, but it never ignored tension. Victor glanced toward the crowd, then back at Mason. His voice rose, louder now. $300, and that's me being generous." Mason reached into his vest and pulled out a folded paper. He placed it gently on the counter. "Funny thing," he said. "I spoke with the sheriff last night. Turns out, we're holding someone under debt like this ain't even legal anymore." Victor's expression darkened. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he snapped. "Mason Reed," he replied. The name landed heavy in the room. A few faces outside shifted. Some stepped back from the windows. That name carried weight across the territory. Not loud, not flashy, just known. Victor's hand twitched toward his gun. He never made it. Mason's revolver was already up, pressed firm against Victor's forehead before anyone saw him draw. The room fell silent. The girl's breathing quickened, the only sound cutting through the stillness. "I wouldn't," Mason said calmly. "I've already sent word about your little cattle business out back. You make one wrong move, and this won't stay in this room." For the first time, something like fear flickered in Victor's eyes. And then, movement. The girl stepped forward, slow, controlled. In her hand was a small blade, thin and sharp, held with the kind of certainty that came from someone who had lived too long without protection. "I don't need anyone to buy me," she said. Her voice was steady, stronger than anyone expected. "I was never his to own." Victor took a step back. Mason didn't lower his gun. "This ends now," Mason said. "She walks out of here, and you pay her what you owe." Time stretched. No one moved. Then Victor lowered his hand, not out of respect, out of understanding. He had already lost. 2 hours later, the whole town watched something it had never seen before. The girl rode out of Red Hollow on a quiet brown mare, her back straight, her eyes forward. The same town that had ignored her suffering now stood silent as she left it behind. Victor Hale stood on his porch, anger burning in his face, while the sheriff lingered nearby, pretending this had all been handled properly. Mason rode beside her as the town faded into the distance. The land opened wide ahead of them, endless, free. But she did not relax. Not yet. She had known too many men who offered help with one hand and took something with the other. "You didn't have to do that," she said after a while, her voice quiet. "Yes, I did," Mason answered. She glanced at him, studying his face. There was something there. Not pride, not satisfaction. Something heavier. "Why?" she asked. Mason kept his eyes ahead. 5 years ago, I had a family," he said. "I left one night chasing a job. But when I came back, there was nothing left." He paused. "I told myself after that, some things can't be fixed. Some people can't be saved." The wind moved softly through the dry grass around them. "Today," he said, "I decided I was wrong." Something shifted inside her. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her without seeing weakness first. They rode until the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft with evening light. Near a line of cottonwood trees, they made camp beside a quiet stream. She washed the dust from her face, the last traces of that place fading into the water. Mason built a fire, keeping his distance, giving her space without needing to say it. The flames flickered between them. Warm, quiet, safe. For the first time in a long while, she felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not survival. Something softer. "Where are we going?" she asked. "That's your choice," Mason said. "I can take you somewhere safe, or you can go wherever you want." "And you?" she asked. He looked at the fire. "Maybe I start over," he said. "If I find a reason." She watched him in silence, then moved a little closer. Not much, just enough. The night wrapped around them, calm and still. And for the first time in years, she felt like she might finally be free. By morning, the desert air felt lighter. They rode in silence as the land slowly changed around them. Dry hills gave way to scattered trees, and the wind carried a different kind of calm. The kind that didn't come from escaping something, but from moving toward something new. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a small Apache settlement. A few riders appeared before they even crossed the boundary, watchful, quiet, protective. One of them stepped forward. He was young, strong, his eyes sharp with suspicion. He looked at Mason first, then at the girl beside him. "You bring him here?" he asked her. "He didn't bring me," she replied calmly. "I chose to come." The young man's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside. They were led to a large wooden structure at the center of the settlement. Inside, elders sat waiting, their presence steady and commanding without needing to raise a voice. An older man, his hair silver and his gaze deep with years of wisdom, looked directly at Mason. "What do you want with her?" he asked. Mason took a breath before answering. "I want her to choose her own path," he said. "If that path has me in it, then I'll be grateful. What if it doesn't? I'll respect it." The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then the elder nodded slowly. "You may stay 3 days," he said. "After that, you leave. Her choice will be her own." 3 days. It didn't sound like much, but it was everything. Over the next days, she began to change. The tension slowly left her shoulders. The fear in her eyes softened. She walked freely, spoke with others, laughed once, quietly, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. Mason watched from a distance. He didn't push, didn't rush. He had learned enough to know that some things could not be forced. On the 3rd morning, he found her by a stream. Her feet rested in the water, small ripples moving around her ankles. She had woven beads into her hair, and the sunlight caught them gently. She looked whole, more than he had ever seen her. "You've decided," Mason said softly. She didn't look at him right away. "I've decided I need time," she said. The words landed harder than any bullet. "I need to remember who I am," she continued. "I need to breathe without fear. I need to stand on my own before I stand beside someone else." Mason nodded slowly. He understood, even if it hurt. "I won't be someone you try to fix," she added, "and I won't let you carry me like a second chance." A quiet wind passed between them. "Give me 1 year," she said. "If what we feel is real, it will still be there." Mason said nothing. He simply stepped closer and held her hand for a moment. Then he let go. He left at sunrise. No promises, no pressure, just space. Months passed. She healed. Not all at once, not easily, but piece by piece. And she helped her people, walked the land, learned how to live again without fear, guiding every step. And through it all, she carried one thing quietly with her. A single letter from Mason. She never opened it again after the first time. She didn't need to. It wasn't about what it said. It was about what it meant. 1 year later, she stood at the edge of the hill overlooking the settlement. The wind brushed softly across her face. But this time, it felt different. Not empty. Not lost. It felt like direction. She saddled her horse without hesitation. This time, she wasn't running. She was choosing. The ride took days. But with every mile, something inside her grew stronger. By the 6th evening, she reached a quiet valley near Tucson. A small ranch sat beneath the fading light. Simple, peaceful, alive. As smoke rose from the chimney, horses moved slowly along the fence. It looked like a place someone had built with care, not just hands. Mason stepped out onto the porch as she approached. For a moment, neither of them moved. He looked different. Not lighter, but steadier. Like a man who had learned how to carry his past without letting it break him. She dismounted slowly. The ground felt steady beneath her boots. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either," she replied. "But something told me to." He smiled. A real one. Not forced. Not guarded. He led her inside. The house was warm, simple, filled with things made by hand. On a shelf sat a small wooden box. Inside were memories of the life he had lost. She noticed, but said nothing. Some pain didn't need words. "What made you build all this?" she asked, when Mason looked around quietly. "I wanted a place worth staying in," he said, "whether you came or not." She felt that. Deep. This wasn't a man waiting to be saved. This was a man who had already started saving himself. That evening, they walked out into the field as the sky softened into gold and blue. "I didn't come because I owe you anything," she said. Mason nodded. "I came because I finally know what I want." He looked at her. "And what's that?" "A life I choose," she said, "with someone who stands beside me, not above me, not in front of me." The words settled between them. Real. Honest. He reached for her hand. Slow. Careful. She let him. This time, not out of need, but out of choice. "Are you staying?" he asked. She touched the blue stone at her neck, a reminder of everything she had survived, and everything she had become. "Yes," she said softly, "if you'll have me." Mason stepped closer. "I've been hoping for that," he said. She smiled. Not the quiet, guarded smile from before. A full one. Free. She rested her forehead gently against his. The world around them felt still. For the first time in years, neither of them was running from the past. They were walking toward something new. Together. And out there, in the wide, untamed West, two broken lives finally found a way to become whole.